Hey everybody, Dr. Passero here. Thanks for tuning in for my second video in the Coping with COVID video series. In this video, I want to talk about some of the key therapies on the front lines for supporting people with COVID infection. And there's a few areas here that I want to cover that I think are actually really exciting. First, we're going to cover some of the basic nutrients, some of the things that we suspected might be very useful from the very beginning, but it was too early to say. We know based on previous human studies and animal studies that there were some things that significantly boost immune function and showed a lot of benefit in other types of upper respiratory viral issues, but we weren't sure about COVID. Now we're starting to get data that we feel very sure. And in the second part of the video, I'm going to talk about some of the other therapies that you won't hear about in mainstream media. These are some things that I'm seeing be very useful from other clinicians that I'm talking with and speaking with, and other research that I'm doing on a daily basis that are really supporting people through a COVID infection. So those are the two things we're going to cover today. Let's get started. The most basic therapies, or things that I would consider to be the most basic therapies that are now starting to gain some really good traction. So from the very beginning, myself and many other more naturally minded doctors have been talking about the importance of certain nutrients for supporting the immune system. And some of the most exciting research has just been breaking in the last couple days regarding some of these nutrients, specifically vitamin D. Now, for many of you who have watched my other videos and on this channel, you'll see there's a vitamin D podcast that I put up that addresses this exact issue that the researchers are finding is useful for COVID. What they're finding, and what this new study out of Northwestern University showed, is that countries that have populations with the lowest levels of vitamin D, people with those low levels of vitamin D are at a much higher risk for severe COVID infection and a higher risk of mortality. And people that have higher levels of vitamin D seem to withstand the viral attack much better, with much fewer complications. And there's some very clear reasons that we've known about for a long time. And this is what I harped on in my vitamin D blog that's on my website and on the vitamin D podcast that I posted during flu season for these exact reasons. Now, here's how it works. Vitamin D does two very important things. Number one, it has the ability to improve the activity of our innate immune system. Our innate immune system is the part of our immune system that's the first line of defense against any kind of viral or bacterial attack. These has to do with our cells called macrophages, natural killer cells. They are constantly surveying our body on every level, looking for foreign invaders, and they have a mechanism to destroy them right away. It's like they're shot on sight. It's only once a virus or a bacteria infection sets in and overwhelms or gets past this initial phase of defense that our secondary side of the immune system comes in, which is antibody production. And that's where we get a different type of immune response. That's our learned or acquired immunity. Vitamin D seems to have this amazing ability to improve our innate immune response, meaning that it makes us less likely to get a viral infection in the first place. And this is the data that we see across the board. This is well validated in human epidemiology and population studies, as well as clinical trials, that vitamin D significantly reduces the risk of upper respiratory infections associated with viral and bacterial illnesses. Now, COVID-19 was completely new, so we couldn't say with a large degree of certainty that this was the case with COVID-19, but the study from Northwestern University clearly shows, based on large sample populations of people that have fallen ill and some that have died from COVID, that vitamin D status plays a very important role in the susceptibility. And the researcher says that there could be up to 50% reduction in mortality risk for people that have higher levels of vitamin D versus people with lower levels. That's cutting death rates in half. And that isn't even including things related to other severe complications that people don't die from, but land them in some of the most critical compromised situations of care in a hospital setting or at home. So the other thing that vitamin D seems to be intimately tied with is not just preventing you from getting the infection in the first place, but I talk about this extensively in my other vitamin D videos, is that vitamin D has this other amazing ability that it can actually regulate the immune response. So one of the things that is the most dangerous aspects of a COVID-19 infection has to do with a cytokine storm, or that's what we think right now, as well as some other complications like blood clotting and some other issues. But a cytokine storm is when the immune system becomes so overwhelmed with the infection that it creates such an inflammatory response in trying to fight off the infection that it actually poisons itself in a way. The inflammatory response is so severe, that's what leads to the shutting down of organs and ultimately death, not the actual virus. And we see that with other upper respiratory infections like influenza virus. Flu viruses can cause their most severe complications by the immune system becoming overactive and actually damaging the body. Vitamin D has this regulatory effect where it actually can calm down that overactivity of the immune system in a very powerful way. And so not only is it helping on the front end by boosting our innate immunity and helping us be less prone to getting the viral infection, but also on the other end, if we do fall ill and our immune system starts to go into a highly active attack against the virus, it can keep that immune reaction coordinated in a way that it doesn't become overactive and cause so much damage to the body. So really amazing. This is nothing new about vitamin D. And, we've known this research for a long time, but we have not had the research specifically around COVID-19 infection. We suspected it would be true, but I did not want to put out any false information. And now until the data was out, and now the data is starting to come out. So a really exciting tool. Vitamin D supplementation needs to be or should be done under the supervision of a doctor. You should have a blood test, and you need to know what dose is right for you. Up to certain doses are safe for the general population, usually 2,000 IUs a day. Adults, there's no evidence that that could be harmful long-term, but some people need much more than that, and some people need less than that. And you can suffer from vitamin D toxicity if you take too much. So being deficient is not good, but if you just start pounding vitamin D supplements without proper testing and supervision, that's not going to be good either. Vitamin D is a simple insurance-covered blood test. We do this every day in my clinic, and it's something that's very easily measured and monitored, and appropriate supplementation is easy to find. Now, another researcher from the Linus Pauling Institute in Oregon, which is an institution that has been devoted to the study of vitamins and nutrients for over 50 years, he has also come out and said that there's good evidence to suggest that doses of both vitamin C and vitamin D above the recommended RDA can be very useful and are safe and effective strategies to reduce the risk of COVID-19 infection. Now, he's basing this on some of the larger population studies and some of the previous research that we've seen on the effects of vitamin C and vitamin D supplementation and the reduced risk of upper respiratory infections and viral infections. So now we're finally starting to get some good data showing us that these key nutrients that were suggested in the very first place to help support the immune system are getting validated in actual human models when looking real time at what's going on all around the world with COVID-19 infection. So these nutrients are key. Other ones that we are going to expect to see really good data on soon is zinc. And the other ones that keep coming up repeatedly that I expect to see very good data on soon as well are going to be things that boost the immune system, things like beta-glucan and other types of key mushroom extracts that increase that initial innate immunity like I talked about. Now, on the second side of this is some other, I don't want to say experimental, but other natural therapies that I'm seeing be so useful that you're not going to hear talked about. The first one by far is homeopathy. Homeopathy has been used in pandemics for over 100 years. There's actually a memorial in Washington, D.C. to Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, for his work in helping with pandemics and epidemics during his time in the late 1800s and 1900s. So homeopathy seems to be this very useful tool, and I've been training and working with some of the world's leading homeopathic doctors to understand how to apply certain homeopathic principles to dealing with epidemics, and specifically this COVID-19 epidemic. And I'm very fortunate to have access to an amazing software program that was developed by one of the world's leading homeopathic doctors that takes people through a series of 30 questions to help narrow it down to about the top 10 remedies that might be the most useful and really selects out the best one or two. And in cases where I've implemented this, I've seen some wonderful results. This is not a cure or a treatment. These are therapies to help support people through the illness. Most people's bodies will get the virus under control on its own. The question is, how do we support people through that process to make as few complications as possible and speed that recovery along as quickly as possible? One of the other therapies that I've been following very closely with other physician friends of mine that are treating and working with and supporting a lot of people through COVID-19 infections is nebulized hydrogen peroxide. Now, this can come with some risks, and I do not recommend that people run out and start doing this because hydrogen peroxide, when nebulized, can be irritating to the lung tissue, and there are some records in the literature of people causing some potential problems with their lungs by doing this repeatedly. However, we do know that hydrogen peroxide is a phenomenal antimicrobial. It kills things, and we know that it kills COVID-19 in certain concentrations. Using a nebulizer, which are inexpensive medical devices, can be obtained through most pharmacies. We can mix a proper solution of a very pure saline, sterile saline, with a very pure dilute peroxide mixture in a certain ratio and use it as a nebulizer as a way to have that hydrogen peroxide come in contact with the nasal mucosa and the mucosa of the lungs and have a very good antimicrobial effect directly on the surface of the mucosa where COVID-19 first attaches and replicates. So, this is newer. I have spoken with many physicians that are using this on a regular basis with patients that are showing symptoms or have confirmed COVID-19 to support them through the process. And I've been working with patients as well, doing the same thing and seeing some very promising results. Now, again, this is not something that you should just go out and do on your own. If you're interested, you can certainly call my clinic and we can talk to you about what it might look like to have a protocol put together that would be safe to use nebulized hydrogen peroxide. So those are some of the most exciting new therapies that I've come across and have been working with and supporting people who are dealing with an active COVID infection or a suspected COVID infection. So if you have any questions, please feel free to call the office. I'm available to answer questions, and so is my staff, and I hope this video was helpful for you and encourages you to take some steps to protect yourself and give you hope that there are some other supportive therapies that can help you or a loved one through this issue if it comes up. Thanks again. This is Dr. Kevin Passero, and I'll see you in my next video.